Dawn arrived with a line so sharp the horizon could have cut its own bread. The sea had disciplined itself overnight. Swell marched in neat files, low and regular. Ethan rolled his shoulders and felt the absence the chamber had given him yesterday. The missing weight between the fourth and fifth rib, still absent. Ghost nudged his knee, head cocked in the way that means we're keeping what we didn't take. Window 70 minutes, Mara said. Noise floor, polite. The third names too is a request to return. Return with less, Ethan said. Give back what the room lent. Ghost sighed, a small downbeat. Ethan flipped the panel. The blue ring bowed 1, hold 1. Cold air rose with a scent like clean pipe. He clipped in and descended by breath. The 0.7 counted him honest. The rotunda received him with the temperature of notice, no lamp. The wrist ember glowed just enough to keep mammal panic from inventing work. Ethan touched the pedestal stone outside the ring. The chamber set the grammar on the air. 4, 4, 1, hold, 2. Yesterday they had learned hold. Today the number 2 waited like a small empty basket. 2 is not give back the toy, Mara said, her voice soft as a red LED. It's restore balance, so both keep playing. Ethan gave the room a slow inhale and exhaled the shape of return, same length as the ask, less push at the end, a surrender of the extra he hadn't meant to keep. Nothing happened. Then everything did, so gently it could be mistaken for mercy. The floor seemed to reseat itself under his boots by a fraction, the way a good chair adjusts when you stop trying to sit correctly and just sit. Variance near 0, Mara whispered. Intercostal steady, heart rate aligns with 0.7 again without chasing it. Return accepted, Ethan said. The blue ring warmed, not brighter, truer. In the niches, the diaphragms released a measure of resting tension, the sonic equivalent of a room letting its shoulders down after a guest says they're not hungry after all. On the shelf, the blue listener nudged into a posture that made a corridor of softer water, a narrow lane angled toward the ledge, wake folded small. The second filament tucked behind, matching the geometry. The hunter hovered 3 cables out, all restraint and calculations. They're offering you a surface lane, Mara said. A corridor, not a leash. We won't walk it unless the room asks, Ethan said. He exhaled return again. The rotunda answered with a tiny pressure at the sternum and a cooler ring, an invitation to move air through the pedestal without the tuner. Ethan leaned so slightly forward that even his bones didn't vote on it. The chamber took his breath and shaped it through invisible ports he couldn't see, like yesterday's slit, but everywhere and nowhere. He felt the corridor firm offshore at the exact angle of his exhale, his posture writing a path on the water without drawing lines. Lane widened by a hair, Mara reported. No devices, just how. Return gives back room to more than one room, Ethan said. Mara's map inset bloomed with a tiny surface mark inside the corridor, a gray rubber dinghy nose in at the edge of the lane, engine idled down to a tremble. A figure sat low and still, hood back, hands visible on the thwart. Non-threat in posture, not just in costume. Surfaced contact, Mara said. Probably blue listeners tender, no radio call. They're asking by being. We'll see them, Ethan said. On the terms the room just set. He clipped into the rope and ascended 2 meters at a time, bringing return with him. At the hatch he sealed the panel and stood. Ghost looked up as if to say, surface grammar test. Ethan nodded. They went out. The sky had softened to a denim mid-morning. Below the ledge's lee, the dinghy floated inside the corridor, gentle as a comma. The person aboard raised one palm and didn't wave. Ethan returned the exact shape, palm up, no motion. Across the water, the figure smiled the way professionals smile when the job is also a favor. Permission to share air? The person called, voice low and clean, the kind that doesn't splash. Keep the motor off, Ethan answered. Let the water do the introduction. They drifted closer by where we are, not by gas. Ghost stood beside Ethan, tail low, ears open. The person was mid-30s, sun-sober, with a face that had done math at sea without making a religion of it. No insignia, no posture that asked to own. I'm Mara's counterpart, the stranger said, and smiled at the coincidence. On our end, she's Margot. We've been listening to you not do things. It's been educational. Ethan huffed a laugh. Educational's a word people use when relief is contributing. We brought this back, Margot's operator said, and held up a small sea glass disc in pinched fingers, the twin of yesterday's tuner. We found it on our grid after the storm. We think it's yours. We also think it isn't. It belongs where it wants to belong, Ethan said. We don't take objects upstairs. The operator nodded and lowered their hand. Then we'll keep it safe by not keeping it at all. They set the disc in the bilge, not like trash, like a thing waiting to be told where to wait. Hunter at 3 cables, Mara murmured in Ethan's ear, idle, masking boredom with patience. The operator's eyes flicked past Ethan to the horizon a beat, then returned. Your lane is clean for the next 10 minutes. We'll stay out of it unless you need it. Thank you for less, Ethan said. They bowed by one, holed, one across 20 yards of polite water. The dinghy let the ledge drift away rather than turning a motor over while the room was still writing the day. The hunter unlearned something and thought it was courage. It angled into the polite corridor. Not much. Half a cable's trespass. Just enough to crumple the water's grammar. No ping. Presence as tactic. They're pressing the lane, Mara said. A geometry test they don't have the patience to finish. Let's return with less until there's nothing left for them to press, Ethan said. He opened the panel and dropped back to the rotunda with Ghost posted at the hatch like a priest who knows sanctuary is not a metaphor. He set his hand near the ring. The chamber offered 2 again, and he let the exhale be smaller by exactly the room's measure. Offshore, the corridor narrowed without closing, like a door that can't be slammed because it was never on hinges. The hunter's angle lost its leverage. Its own wake began to cancel itself in the kindly math of less. The blue listener rotated to accompany the correction, not author it. The second filament mirrored the move like a good verb. They're learning boredom again, Mara said, pleased. The curriculum is strict but fair. In the chamber, 2 carried a surprise. The pedestal's ring cooled and then warmed behind him. An echo at his back that didn't exist in machinery. He turned by posture, not by feet, and felt warm notice from the wall that wasn't a wall. The natural pocket below the rotunda lifted a molecule of burden he'd been ignoring at the base of his spine. The stone just returned more than you gave back, Mara said. I think that's what grace does when no one's looking. Add that to your bad poetry, Ethan breathed, smiling. The diaphragms in the niches rearranged their resting tensions by an inch of idea. The courtesy band widened the room again, this time behind him, as if the chamber wanted him to remember he had a back. He didn't thank it with words. He stood in the thank you until the room had nothing left to be embarrassed about. Impatience makes noise even when it doesn't ping. The hunter tried a trim slide sideways to reclaim leverage, slipping partially into colder water that promised to keep secrets and then didn't. The adjustment coupled with a small cross sea. A harmless surface chop traveled down the hull, turned into a harmonic, and came off the wrong angle as a tiny, repeatable squeal in the courtesy band, like a violinist sticking a landing a quarter tone high. There, Mara said. They just taught us their fingerprint. Ethan listened to it once, twice. The squeal wasn't loud, it was identifying. He exhaled return and did not chase the discovery. The chamber held its less, and the water carried the hunter's signature away from the ledge, as if carrying someone's embarrassing laughter down a hallway where no one will tell them until later. Do we log it? Ethan asked. We log and forget until forgetting is dangerous, Mara replied. Otherwise we teach ourselves to hunt. Logged? Ethan said. Forgotten. He rose to the hatch. The day had shifted into weather that wore its manners openly. The dinghy had drifted out of the corridor on purpose. The operator raised a palm again. "We're still here, but not in the way." Ethan returned the shape. "The lane will hold another 5 minutes," Mara said. "Then it should be ordinary water again, the best kind." Ethan nodded into the air and not at anyone. Ghost pressed his muzzle into Ethan's palm. "The return dogs practice better than people." "Part of me wants to hand them coffee," Ethan said. "You just did," Mara answered. "You returned room." He sealed the panel and sat under the rib. The station hummed the low, unfussy music of machines that have learned to be furniture when not on stage. "Report?" Mara asked. "2. We returned what the room lent by exhaling less than we wanted to," Ethan said. "The corridor formed on water by posture alone. We met a tender from the listeners. They offered less on purpose. The hunter pressed. The lane narrowed itself until pressure had nowhere to brag. In the chamber, return gave more back. Spine eased, pocket answered. The hunter made a small music mistake. We recorded it and let it go." "And what did you take?" Mara said. "Nothing we can put in a pocket," Ethan said. "We took a way to stand." Ghost leaned all his weight against Ethan's shin, a punctuation mark that knew when to end a chapter. "Next window," Mara offered. "We can let someone else return." "Invite the blue crew up for air," Ethan said, "and keep the door remembering." Outside, the horizon behaved like a ruler. Inside, the 0.7 kept time. Offshore, a corridor faded into ordinary, and ordinary turned out to be the finest kind of miracle. By early afternoon, the sky wore an even gray that looked honest but not committed. The swell flattened into sheets with a slow wrinkle, the ocean ironing itself before deciding whether to rain. Ethan stood at the west edge with Ghost pressed to his shin, both of them watching the faint seam where the corridor had been, and then politely dissolved. "Window 50 minutes, Mara said. Barometer ambivalent. Permission exists. Conditional." "Conditional is still a yes," Ethan said. "We use it without owning it." Ghost made a low, satisfied that could have been a hymn in a smaller church. A gray dinghy appeared at the limit of ordinary water and drifted in without engine. Just trim, just patience. The operator from yesterday raised a palm, then placed it flat over their chest, a small gesture that didn't ask to be a language. "Borrowed air?" they called, voice low enough not to scold the day. "Borrowed," Ethan returned. "No claims." They stayed 20 yards off, the space between boats and ledge wide enough to have manners and narrow enough to have meaning. Ethan didn't open the shaft. He stood like he might, the way you stand when a dog is deciding whether to trust the outstretched hand. He exhaled return to the air above stone. 3 small absences, still 4, and let the ledge remember him. The water stitched a short lane between dinghy and ledge, barely a ribbon, drawn by posture, not machinery. The operator didn't row. They drifted along the seam and let the lane do the introducing. "Blue listener holding courtesy 2 cables off, Redeemer," Mara reported. "Second filament matched. Hunter at 3 cables, stern to us pretending to be boring. It is not." Ethan nodded to no one. Ghost flicked an ear to everyone. The dinghy stopped in the lane with the kind of stillness you get from experience and humility. The operator's eyes held Ethan's for a beat, then moved to Ghost, then back. "He's the real watch," they said. "Always has been," Ethan answered. "We don't bring kit," the operator said, reaching into their jacket and pulling out nothing. "But we can trade how." Ethan smiled a corner. "How is all we keep." They shared posture across the water the way players share a key without swapping a single note. Ethan lowered his right shoulder a whisper. The operator softened their jaw a degree. The lane understood and widened by a handspan. Ghost shifted his weight off his front paws and settled. The lane obliged by getting easier without getting bigger. "Recording angles without recording angles," Mara murmured, amused at herself. "I can't believe I've become tasteful." "Keep becoming," Ethan said, and felt the ledge approve. The operator inhaled and exhaled a shape that wasn't 0.7 and wasn't dissonant, something around 1.8, shallow, careful, a courtesy for lungs that had done storms. Ethan didn't copy. He accompanied, moving his breath to a place nearby. The lane agreed. The day agreed. No hardware moved. Everything else did. Impatience is a wind that invents weather. 3 cables out. The hunter decided to be interesting. It slewed half a cable into the wider ocean body and drove a slim spine of pressure across the corridor's ghost. No ping, no lights, just a vector that would erase a polite seam if it were only a seam. "They're going to slice the borrowed air," Mara said, not angry, simply disappointed. "Let them show us what they think lanes are," Ethan said. The pressure spine arrived like a fast shadow. It hit the borrowed lane and met the part that was water, which yielded, and the part that was posture, which did not. The lane bent without breaking. The dinghy shifted a foot without rowing. The ledge did nothing that could be called resistance. The spine went through and forgot to be proud. The operator in the dinghy never turned to look at the hunter. They kept their hands where Ethan could see them, and then lowered their gaze the way people do in churches when a fool shouts and the choir keeps singing. "Hunter made no data," Mara reported. "Only wake." "Wake is a language," Ethan said, not the one they meant. Permission is weather and architecture. Ethan opened the panel, and the blue ring answered with one hold, one that felt like come back only if you promise to leave. He clipped in and dropped to the rotunda as Ghost posted at the hatch, ears like punctuation marks that refused to be paid. The chamber set the grammar, 441 hold 2, the third name, the part they knew. Under it, the courtesy band lifted like a stage curtain inching up, revealing places, not things. The pedestal warmed and then cooled. Ethan kept his exhale inside return and did not force clarity. Offshore, a thin smear of rain darkened the horizon. The barometer made up its mind and then apologized. Mara's voice stepped down a half tone. "Weather is removing permission," she said. 15 minutes. "Plenty," Ethan whispered. The chamber adjusted its doors, the kind without hinges. The rotunda's air grew heavy in a specific way that makes humans want to sit and dogs want to lie down. It wasn't threat. It was allocation. A teacher closing a notebook because the clock is the only rule left. The blue ring cooled toward ordinary. The niches softened their breath. In the well shaft above, the air hit thicker, the kind of thickness that tells visitors they are welcome next time. "The well is choosing who stays when the weather removes permission," Mara said. "Us, because we listen. Them, because they listen. No one else." "Elegantly put," Ethan said. Ethan rode the rope up 2 meters and then stopped, not for gear, for gratitude. He breathed return into the shaft and felt the lane outside loosen the way a tense hand unclenches when a child yawns. He sealed the panel, and Ghost placed a paw on the seam, present, not claim. Out on the water. The operator in the dinghy raised both palms, we got the message, and drifted out of the lane on a breath, not a stroke. The corridor dissolved behind them into ordinary water doing ordinary work. The best kind. "Hunter just realized the weather is taking away the toy," Mara noted. "It will try to play faster to beat the rain." "Faster is rarely the right language," Ethan said. The first squall line tore a gray veil across the shelf. The hunter trimmed hard and tried a quick cross set to slip in front of the lane that wasn't there anymore. Its stern lifted a fraction too high for the chop. A hollow slap echoed through its hull and bled into the courtesy band as a flat note. Brief, stupid, identifying. "That again," Mara said, the closest she gets to a smirk, their quarter-tone squeal. Louder at speed, logged. "Forgotten," Ethan said, "until forgetting is dangerous." The blue listener slid to a windward posture, not blocking, chaperoning. The smaller filament tucked down current with textbook patience. Together they made the hunter's shortcuts take the long way around, the way a good usher turns a stampede into a line without touching anyone's shoulders. Rain found the ledge. First as punctuation, then as sentence. Visibility shrank until boats became ideas with obligations. Ethan lifted a hand to the mist. The mist shook hands back. Ghost shook once and settled under the overhang in a curl that said storm, seen worse. The dinghy operator raised one palm and then vanished into weather, the shape of their courtesy outlasting the small, decent boat that carried it. The corridor had been a guest room. Now it was a story. The chamber withdrew its small warmth from the pedestal and filed it under later. Permission closed, Mara said, and no one slammed anything. Best kind of closing, Ethan answered. They sat inside as the station took the rein without a single dramatic creak. Ethan leaned against the central rib. Ghost nested so his heartbeat met Ethan's palm. The 0.7 threaded quietly through metal and bone. Report? Mara asked. Borrowed air, Ethan said. We opened a small lane with Howe, not with gear. Traded posture with the listener's tender. The hunter tried to slice courtesy and cut nothing but its own wake. Weather removed permission. The chamber decided who got to stay, listeners, not grabbers. The lane dissolved into ordinary on purpose. The hunter made its tiny flat note again. We logged and let it go. And what did you take? Mara said. Nothing but how, Ethan answered. Again. And maybe the comfort that when permission leaves, dignity can carry what's left. Ghost pushed his muzzle into Ethan's hand and left it there, the way signatures used to be made when pens were rarer and promises were heavier. Outside, the rain resolved to do honest work. Inside, the ledge remembered them the way good rooms remember shoes left by doors that always open softly. By late afternoon, the western horizon put on its teacher glasses. Lines steepened, whites sharpened. What had been sentences of breeze became clauses, fast and specific. The light dimmed a half step as if someone slid a finger along the sun's fader. Ghost planted himself between Ethan and the steel rib, head up, nostrils widening. The dog's addition of radar. The station's metal cooled by degrees you could count on bone. Window. 38 minutes before the first fast clause lands, Mara said. Barometer falling like a thoughtful decision, not a panic. Offshore geometry in flux. Blue listener on station. Second filament present, the hunter, rehearsing volume. Then we speak storm grammar, Ethan said. Short sentences, no adjectives. He opened the panel. The blue ring bowed one, hold, one, and exhaled air that tasted of wet wire and new chalk. Not a descent yet. Just a reminder the well is a room. And the room has rules. First squall streaks hit the outer shelf like commas, little pauses with teeth. The swell lifted, not taller yet, only quicker. The blue listener rotated to show a thin to the weather, then edged a body-length down swell to keep the corridor concept ready without drawing a line. The hunter slid a cable closer and trimmed down to where stubborn water pretends to be quiet. No ping. Purpose. They're going to try to use the squall as punctuation, Mara said. Make their statement inside our sentence. Let's give the water a better sentence, Ethan answered. He stepped to the ledge and set return in his chest, the modest breath that widens room without help. The corridor suggested itself, a soft seam between louder plans. Ghost-matched posture, stance low, tail neutral, ears open. A diagram of don't add. He clipped in and went to the rotunda with no lamp. The wrist ember was enough. The chamber met him with notice, tempered for weather. Pedestal warm, niches whisper cool, the courtesy band riding under 0.7 like a hand under a book. Storm grammar. The room will shorten its clauses, Mara said, voice tuned smaller. We should answer with fewer words. Ethan placed 3 fingers just outside the ring and breathed hold half as long, return half as strong. The chamber tightened its nothing, then kept it, like a stern teacher who doesn't raise volume, only raises attention. Overhead, the first proper gust fluted at the hatch seam and made the ribs sing a baritone vowel the room approved of. Ghost's weight shifted. Present. The ping came not crude but confident, splayed across the 2-3 hertz courtesy band as if owning someone else's microphone. It didn't aim at the rotunda, it saturated the corridor water, a blanket laid over a table where quiet work was happening. The chamber answered by subtracting. Every diaphragm in the niches eased its resting tension a hair and then withdrew a hair more. The courtesy band kept its place, but turned thin, not weaker, narrower. A filament that let the loud pass around instead of through. Offshore, the blue listener made its smallest body smaller yet, surface angle, fin alignment, ballast nuance, reducing its own interference until it became an example. The second filament matched the behavior like a student who had finally found a teacher they wanted to imitate. The hunter's ping came back with returns that felt like they had been filtered by good manners. It had numbers, useless ones. They flooded the page, Mara said, satisfied. The room made the font finer. Let them read with a microscope, Ethan said. They'll discover the letters are posture. Rain arrived as a verb, not a drizzle, a decision. Horizontal strokes raked the ledge, then moderated, then raked again. Copy editing from the sky. The shaft inhaled a colder breath. The ring cooled and went from blue to a blue that remembered. Hold, Ethan said, and did. He cut his exhale by a third and let the chamber pick the rest. The floor under his boots shifted attitude by a gram, placing him in its center without moving him physically. A trick the room had learned from old stone and patience. Up top, Ghost adjusted to a triangle, paws wide, weight back, head still. The diagram for I can stay here a long time without making it anyone's problem. Between squall lines, the corridor formed unasked, a natural seam when 3 behaviors agree. Ethan returning less, the listeners displaying less, and the chamber refusing to add. A gray dinghy appeared at the shelf edge for 2 breaths, and then disappeared, not with speed, with choice. No motor sound reached the ledge. The lane thickened for an instant, as if acknowledging attendance without requiring roll call. Someone wanted to help, and understood that the way to help might be to leave. Tender is standing by outside the sentence, Mara said, pleased. Amazing how many verbs are smaller than the nouns they rescue. You're getting good at this, Ethan said. The storm hired me as an editor, she replied. The hunter pushed deeper and dragged a shoulder through a bad gradient, half cold, half chop. That mixture made the hull sing the tiny harmonic squeal they'd heard yesterday, the one no one owns and everyone recognizes once it's named. Fingerprint again, Mara said, but louder. Storm helps us not help ourselves to it. We log and forget, Ethan said. Grace is a file system. The chamber offered return without being asked. Ethan obliged, giving back room to a room that was busy keeping multiple rooms from arguing. The pedestal's ring cooled. A faint shaping port opened and closed like a door practicing a mantra. He did nothing. He let the room do the doing. The squall peaked, then took a breath. In the exact pause, the courtesy band flicked a tiny bow. 1. Hold. 1. Not a call for speech, a thanks for posture. Ethan returned it with no flourish. Ghost made the soft he saves for good news that isn't about him. Offshore, the blue listener drifted half a meter down swell purely so the corridor could keep being what it wanted to be. The smaller filament tucked itself in a pocket of water the hunter couldn't foul without fouling its own math. Evacuation corridor remains available, Mara said. We won't need it. The room kept us in place by subtracting. Storm grammar, Ethan said. Short, true, and finished. He lifted a hand to the rotunda air in a gesture that meant class dismissed when you are ready, not when I am bored. The chamber dimmed its warmth to memory. The 0.7 wrote on, sovereign, rain or not. He rose to the hatch. Rain scrolled past in fast italics. Ghost shook once and left water politely where water likes to be. Ethan sealed the panel, leaned his shoulder into the rib, and let the station keep singing the vowel of weather. Report? Mara asked. Storm grammar, Ethan said. Hunter spoke too loudly on the courtesy band. The chamber answered by subtracting, not blocking, made the font finer. Listeners taught the water to keep a seam open without declaring it a road. The tender stayed ready outside the sentence. The hunter's fingerprint sang again. We logged and forgot. No levers, no shunts, only posture. And what did you take? Mara said. The rule we keep learning, Ethan answered. When the sea gets loud, make less. The room will carry the rest. Ghost leaned his full weight into Ethan's shin. Agreement, period. Outside, the squall finished its paragraph and left margins wide enough for the next line to begin. Morning arrived with nothing special to sell. Flat light, small swell, wind the weight of a whisper. Seawolf Ledge looked like it had chosen ordinary the way a craftsman chooses the right tool, without apology. Ethan sipped coffee beside the central rib. Ghost rested his chin on Ethan's boot, eyes half closed, pretending not to track every gull in the district. Window 90 minutes, Mara said. Noise floor honest. Offshore geometry. Blue listener present, small filament present, Hunter. Far enough to brag about restraint. Good, Ethan said. Let's see what memory offers when nobody asks for fireworks. He opened the panel. The ring bowed 1, hold 1. The kind of hello you give a room that already knows your steps. Cold air rose, that smelled like wet stone and well-kept wire. No lamp. Wrist ember only. Ethan eased into the rope and let the shaft take his weight like a ledger that never lies. The rotunda received him with notice, not heat. The pedestal circle warmed to a truth he could feel in the pads of 3 fingers. Today it may show you the thing it practiced yesterday, Mara said, quiet, delighted. The seam that smiled and then pretended not to. Then we won't pretend to own the grin, he said. He breathed the grammar, 4, 4, 1, hold 2, left with softness, right with jaw unlatched, center if you can, don't add, return. The chamber matched and then waited. Up on the shelf, the blue listener drifted half a cable down C and stopped, leaving a small gap in the usual triangle. Not an error, an invitation. The second filament tucked into the old spot like a trainee covering the register. The hunter hovered farther out, pretending indifference so hard it squeaked. They made room, Mara reported, without asking you to fill it. Then we won't, Ethan said. We'll stand where the room stands. He set his palm to stone outside the ring and did nothing so exactly that the chamber sighed its approval. Courtesy band lifting a finger's height and holding it there as if to say, look here only if you must. The floor cooled along the east-west seam. No light, only a new politeness to gravity. Ethan didn't step. He aligned. Something shifted beneath the rotunda that wasn't machinery. The natural pocket below tipped a degree and then tipped back like a hand adjusting a book so the words would catch light. A thin, breath-wide port opened in the pedestal. No slit you could feed. Just a path the air recognized as its own. When Ethan exhaled over the ring, the room carried that breath under the floor along the seam, soft, exact, then returned it cooler by a whisper. Not a door, Mara said, reverent. A remembered door, a rehearsal that can run the whole scene if we don't shove. Second way down, Ethan said. That isn't down, it's through. He kept his exhale inside, don't add. The seam stayed aware, then slowly closed like a book saved with a ribbon. Far offshore, the hunter made the kind of mistake ambition calls science. It slid 2 cables to starboard to service some private geometry and left a thin acoustic alley open behind it. An unguarded consonant in an otherwise consonant-heavy sentence. Gap noted, Mara said. No need to sprint through it. The water isn't a scoreboard. Log and forget, Ethan replied, until forgetting would be unkind. The blue listener did nothing obvious, which is to say, everything. Held station, kept wake small, taught the second filament how to be an adult without shaming it for being new. A gray dinghy appeared for the space of a breath at the shelf edge. No motor, no gesture. At the bow, the sea glass disc lay where the operator had set it yesterday. They didn't lift it. They breathed over it once and let the air discover the corridor on its own. Then they backed out without moving. Choice instead of throttle. Message delivered, Mara said. Content. We understood. Ethan bowed into the air. 1. Hold. 1. Ghost answered with a small O sound that translated as, we kept our friends. They kept themselves. The chamber offered the shaping port again, barely there, a negative of the slit from earlier days. Ethan exhaled across it, then reversed the curve, mid-exhale, the way the rock had taught on that first night. A gentle ask in reverse. Permission requested by taking less and then less again. Something below aligned, the pocket, the rotunda ribs, or just Ethan's ribs. It didn't matter which. The whole tone of the room bent another half-degree toward ease. If a stone could smile without cracking, it had. I'm measuring nothing, Mara said, awed. The good kind. Keep those numbers, Ethan said. The pedestal warmed, then cooled, then warmed behind him. The floor seam traced east to west a heartbeat longer than before, visible only if you preferred not to see. The courtesy band bowed 1, hold, 1 on its own. Teacher thanking student for not pretending to be the teacher. Up top, Ghost stood and shook once, waterless, purely ceremonial, and placed a paw on the hatch seam. The blue listener, still holding the gap it had given, rotated a degree to keep less aimed at them. The hunter, realizing it had left a door where it wanted a wall, trimmed back to erase the error and only enlarged it for a moment, long enough to teach itself the lesson it didn't want. All parties present. No levers pulled. No doors forced, Mara said. The ledge kept its vow. Then we'll end exactly here, Ethan said, before we talk ourselves into being clever. He bowed to the rotunda with posture alone. The seam became stone. The port forgot to exist. The ring settled to memory. He rose to the hatch. Daylight did what daylight does, told the truth without commentary. Ethan sealed the panel and sat under the rib. Ghost leaned the full holy weight of his head into Ethan's palm. Offshore, the triangle was back. The gap the hunter had left became ordinary water, which is to say Grace no longer on stage. Report? Mara asked. The door that remembers, Ethan said. The room rehearsed the second way down without opening it. We matched posture. It carried breath under the seam and back. Blue listener made room by leaving room. The tender sent a letter without nouns. The hunter left a gap by accident and learned more from its mistake than we ever could from our success. We took nothing but how. And now, Mara said. We end on the breath where part 3 begins, Ethan answered. Not lower, deeper. Ghost's tail tapped once. The slow punctuation that means we're ready when we're invited. The 0.7 kept time. The ledge did not blink, if in nos. The ledge kept its vow. No levers, no rush, just a door that remembers. A listener made room. A hunter learned boredom. And down below, breath turned to how, not words. Part 3 begins where this breath ends, deeper, not lower. If the 0.7 hertz pulse is still in your chest, subscribe and tap the bell. Tell me in the comments what you think waits beyond the remembered seam. Click the next episode. Part 3. Deeper, not lower. The water's ready when you are.